Hey guys, it is What You Cookin' Wednesday. So I am making some Italian wedding soup. So I'm finishing up the meatballs, and I always mix the chopped meat up in the deluxe stand mixer. So I have it sitting right here. And I just put all the ingredients in the bowl, and then I mix it on the mix setting for about 45 seconds using the regular beater. And that way I don't have to stick my hands in the chopped meat and mix everything up. So the meatballs are turkey meatballs, and it's just turkey, an egg, Italian seasoning, salt, and little pepper, and half a cup of breadcrumbs. You can use, the recipe calls for panko, but I use whatever I have in the house. So you don't have to be picky about that. And then I am using the medium scoop to put all the meatballs here on my stone bar pan. I like to bake meatballs in the oven. They're a lot less messy, and this is super quick. 400 degrees, 20 minutes. I take this out and I just plop the meatballs right in the pot. They're already cooked. And the medium scoop is a great size for the meatballs in the soup. Okay, so let me just pop this in the oven, and then we'll get the soup going, and it's all gonna be done about the same time. I'm just gonna move my mixer out of the way. Okay, this goes right in the oven. All right, so let's prep the vegetables. So we have some carrots, and I've got an onion. I've already gotten this all started, and I had some mushrooms that needed to be used, so those already have been sauteing in the pan because I like them to be as well done as possible. Okay, so here's my onion. I peeled it, I cut it into quarters. I'm going to use the mandolin to just dice this up. So just put your quarters in there. You don't want to jam them in the food hopper, but if you put them into the standing up, this gives you a really nice dice. And I'm doing this on the number 3 setting, so they're actually kind of sliced. But I'm doing the number 3 setting so they're nice and thin and they don't take that long to cook. And let's do the other half. And then I am going to do these carrots as well. So I've already peeled them. I use the pivot peeler. This is my favorite. I love this peeler. Super sharp. If you have not seen this, you could do all your carrots, but you can also do your mangoes, your butternut squash. You can flip it around so that it will peel this way. And it does go both ways. So if you're peeling your carrots, you could just go and back and forth, and you're done in no time. All right, just watch your fingernails because it is really, really sharp. And all right, I'm just gonna cut the tops off of these carrots, and I'm just going to cut them so that they're shorter length so that they fit in the food hopper. And I'm going to slice these on number 3 also because I like the carrots to be nice and thin. I find that carrots take the longest to cook in soup. I don't know, anybody else agree with that? Like, carrots always take forever. All right, and again, you want to stand these up in your food hopper, so put them all in at once. You don't have to do them one at a time. And by the way, the recipe said 3, but my carrots were really small. So, and other than the onions, the only other vegetable in here is a can of diced tomatoes and 4 cups of spinach. So I'm going to use frozen spinach. I do have some growing in my garden, but not nearly enough to make soup. All right, so let's head over to the pot. I'll show you what's going on over here. Okay, so like I said, I already got started. Whoops, sorry guys. I already got started, so here's my mushrooms. They're partially cooked, and sorry, hope I'm not making you guys dizzy. And because I like them really, really well done. And then I'm just going to add my carrots, my onions, just gonna push this right in here. Okay, we're gonna saute this up. This is one of my favorite soup recipes, by the way. It is so quick and easy. And if you don't have time to make the meatballs, you could buy the meatballs. Get the frozen ones or get the pre-made ones. And if you do the pre-made ones, sometimes they're already pre-cooked. If they're not pre-cooked, you can just throw them in the oven and cook them, and then prep the rest of your ingredients while the meatballs are baking. The other thing is this recipe was actually written for the deluxe multi-cooker. So if you wanted to use your pressure cooker, you could definitely do that. You don't have to, but you know, I never make this recipe in a pressure cooker because it is so easy and quick to make this recipe just in a pot, especially because I bake the meatballs. The other thing is the recipe is written for 1 pound of ground turkey, but the turkey that I typically get is more than a pound. So, which is good for me because, you know, I live with all guys. So, all right, I'm just pressing 3 cloves of garlic in here. All right, one. So anyway, what I find is if you use more than the 1 pound of turkey, the meatballs do not fit in the multi-cooker in one batch. Okay, there's just too many of them to fry them all in the multi-cooker, so you end up having to do a second batch of them anyway. This was a really big garlic clove. It like exploded all over the place. And I'm like, you know what, it's actually quicker for me to just do them on the bar pan in the oven. Okay, so 400 degrees. I don't grease it or anything. I just throw them on there. This garlic clove is like all over the place here. All right. All right, see, look at this. It's just, I couldn't get it to all go into the crust. It was so much. And by the way, you saw I'm not peeling this garlic. I'm just pressing this garlic. So you don't want to peel it. Okay, that's it for the garlic. Let's give this a stir. All right, here's what's going on. Okay, so I've got my carrots, onions, mushrooms, 3 garlic cloves, and just a little bit of olive oil. And if you're just tuning in, this is Italian wedding soup and the meatballs are baking in the oven. Okay. You can use, this recipe was written for the Italian seasoning mix. However, since this recipe came out, Pampered Chef came out with this delicious basil pesto. I like this seasoning in this soup. Okay, but you could use your Italian seasoning. I'm totally fine with that also. Like, it's delicious both ways, but I happen to like the extra basil that's in here. So it's 1 tablespoon. Now the big difference is that this one has salt and the Italian does not. Okay, so consider that when you add the salt. So I'm gonna use some seasoning salt. This also has a little bit of garlic, some onion, some celery, other flavors like that. And I am going to use less than the teaspoon of salt because I don't like my food salty. Alright, so we're going to go with that. But however, if you want to use the Italian, this is delicious also. Okay. I'm going to give that a stir. Alright, and then we are going to add our canned tomatoes. Now, I usually do use a can of diced tomatoes, but I happen to have half of a can of crushed tomatoes, so I'm going to throw this in. So it's not going to be chunky tomato, it's going to be more like a minestrone. Okay, by the time I add the chicken broth and other stuff. Okay, so we're just gonna add this in. This is just your regular crushed tomatoes. I think there's basil in this one. I like basil. I use a lot of basil. I probably will add some fresh basil from my garden after, it's from last year's garden, it's in the freezer. I'll probably add this right at the end because I really do love basil. I use chicken stock rather than buying the pre-made broth for a couple of different reasons. The first one is that the chicken stock doesn't take up nearly as much room in my refrigerator as the broth does. And this is a new can, so of course now I can't get it open, and I thought it was open. There we go. Still have that tab in the way. All right, so this is 1 teaspoon for every cup, and I don't really measure this. I just kind of add a blob in here. Okay, so I'm going to add a little more because it's supposed to be 8 cups of broth. And then I'm just going to use my Easy Read measuring cup and get my 8 cups of water. You could also swap kale in this recipe. That's actually how it's written, is for kale. Okay, that's 4. And even though I'm using the crushed tomatoes, I'm still going to do the full 8 cups of water because I have more than a pound of meatballs cooking. So, and this is, just so you know, this is a 6-quart Dutch oven, which is really the perfect size for making most soups. So I'll show you, but there's plenty of room for my meatballs still in here. Okay. All right, so my meatballs probably need about 10 more minutes. I am going to let this start simmering. Once this starts simmering, I'm going to add half a cup, 3/4 of a cup. I'm probably going to do 3/4 of a cup. I have the little tiny tube pasta that I'm going to add in here. When I do orzo, or you could do pearl couscous in here if you wanted to also. And when I do those, I usually just use half a cup, so just a little bit of pasta. And then when the meatballs are done, I'm just going to drop them in the bowl, in the pot rather, and let it simmer for about another 10 minutes so all those flavors blend really nice, and then dinner's ready. So you can make this soup in an hour and it's completely done. All right, so I hope you guys are having a great day. If anybody wants the recipe, let me know. I will post it below. And thank you guys so much. There's a whole bunch of you on here today. I appreciate you jumping on. Thank you so much. All right, have a great day, guys. Talk to you soon.